The year was 2021. The world outside was grappling with its own chaos, but in the sleepy town of Whisper Creek, life moved at a different pace. Nestled amidst rolling hills and whispering willows, it was the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbor's name, and doors were often left unlocked. Then, the unthinkable happened. A chill settled over Whisper Creek. A chill that had nothing to do with the approaching autumn. It began with whispers, anxieties shared in hushed tones at the local diner and the post office. People were missing, vanishing without a trace. 12 souls, to be precise. 12 faces that had once brightened the streets of Whisper Creek were now plastered on missing posters, their eyes pleading for answers. The disappearances had been spread out over weeks, each one leaving the community a little more frayed, a little more afraid. Then, on a crisp October morning, the truth hit Whisper Creek with the force of a hurricane. A gruesome discovery at the edge of town, in the once peaceful expanse of Blackwood Forest, shattered the tranquility and plunged the town into a nightmare. Whisper Creek was the kind of town where time seemed to move a little slower. The streets were lined with charming, old-fashioned shops, and the air was always filled with the scent of blooming flowers and freshly baked bread. It was a place where children still chased fireflies on warm summer evenings, their laughter echoing through the twilight as they ran barefoot across the soft grass. And neighbors helped each other out without a second thought. Whether it was fixing a leaky roof or lending a cup of sugar, the sense of community was strong and unwavering. The annual pie contest at the Fall Festival was the biggest event of the year, drawing in participants from all over the county. It was a time for everyone to come together, share stories, and celebrate the simple joys of life. And the most scandalous thing that ever happened was Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning blueberry pie recipe mysteriously disappearing. Rumor had it Old Man Thompson had something to do with it. The gossip provided endless amusement for the townsfolk, who loved a good mystery, even if it was just about a pie. The town was small, its population hovering just around 5,000 souls. It was a place where everyone knew each other, and newcomers were welcomed with open arms and a warm smile. Everyone knew everyone else's business, whether they wanted to or not. Secrets were hard to keep, and news traveled fast, often embellished with each retelling. It was a place where people came to escape the hustle and bustle of city life, seeking refuge in the tranquility and simplicity that Whisper Creek offered, to raise their families in a peaceful environment where the air was clean and the pace of life was slow. Parents felt safe letting their children play outside until the streetlights came on and everyone looked out for one another. But that idyllic image of Whisper Creek was about to be shattered, broken into a million pieces by a horrifying discovery. The peace and security that the townspeople had taken for granted were suddenly under threat. The very heart of Whisper Creek, its innocence and tranquility, would be tested in ways no one could have ever imagined. The community, once so tight-knit and trusting, began to unravel as fear and suspicion took hold. The disappearances had started subtly at first, almost unnoticeable in the rhythm of daily life. People went about their routines, unaware of the dark cloud slowly descending upon their town. A young woman, known for her infectious laughter and love for stray animals, didn't show up for her shift at the local library. Her absence was the first sign that something was terribly wrong. A high school football star, his future bright with promise, vanished after a Friday night game. His truck found abandoned near the old Miller place. The town was left in shock, unable to comprehend how such a thing could happen in their peaceful community. As the days turned into weeks, the sense of unease grew. Candlelight vigils were held, and the community came together, holding hands in solidarity, hoping for the safe return of their missing loved ones. Search parties combed the woods and fields, volunteers joined the efforts, and the police worked tirelessly, but the answers remained elusive. Whisper Creek was no longer the serene haven it once was. Town meetings were filled with concerned citizens, and the mayor addressed the community, urging everyone to stay vigilant and report any suspicious activity. The sense of unity was strong, but so was the underlying fear. Families clung to hope, but the empty chairs at dinner tables and the missing faces in family photos were a constant reminder of the darkness that had descended upon Whisper Creek. The town's charm was shattered, and its people were left to pick up the pieces. The clearing was a grotesque tableau of horror, a scene that seemed to have been ripped straight from the pages of a nightmare. Underneath the watchful eyes of the ancient trees, which had stood as silent sentinels for centuries, 12 bodies lay scattered, their lifeless forms a macabre mockery of the tranquility that once defined Blackwood Forest. Some were partially buried, as if the earth itself had tried to hide the evidence of such heinous acts, while others lay exposed to the elements, their remains ravaged by time and scavengers. The forest, once a sanctuary for wildlife, had become a graveyard. The stench of death hung heavy in the air, a putrid odor that seemed to cling to the back of your throat, making it difficult to breathe. It was a smell that would haunt the memories of those who encountered it. It was a scene that would be forever seared into the minds of those who stumbled upon it, a gruesome puzzle that whispered of unspeakable acts. The forest, once a place of solace, had become a canvas for a monstrous artist. The victims, ranging in age from a teenage girl on the cusp of adulthood to a kindly old widower who always had a smile and a kind word for everyone, represented the very fabric of the community. They were strewn across the forest floor like discarded dolls, their lives snuffed out in an instant, leaving behind a void that could never be filled. Their faces, once etched with the joys and sorrows of life in Whisper Creek, were now frozen in eternal screams, their eyes staring vacantly into the abyss. Each face told a story of a life abruptly ended, dreams unfulfilled, and futures stolen. The discovery sent shockwaves through the small town, ripping apart the fabric of their peaceful existence. Whisper Creek, a place where everyone knew each other, was now a town gripped by fear and sorrow. The grim reality of the situation settled in like a thick fog, suffocating the hope that had flickered in the hearts of many. The once vibrant community was now shrouded in a pall of despair. The missing posters that had become a haunting fixture around town, each one a silent plea for answers, were now cruel reminders of the tragedy that had befallen Whisper Creek. Each poster represented a life lost, a family shattered. They were now cruel reminders of the tragedy that had befallen Whisper Creek. The memorial sites, adorned with flowers and photos, stood as silent testaments to the lives that had been so brutally taken. The town would never be the same again, forever marked by the horror that had unfolded in the heart of Blackwood Forest. The news spread like wildfire through the quiet streets of Whisper Creek. What was once a serene and tranquil town, where everyone knew each other by name, was now a place of fear and uncertainty. The initial shock soon gave way to a wave of grief and terror that washed over the town. Families huddled together, seeking solace in each other's company, while the community tried to make sense of the senseless. The idyllic image of their peaceful community was shattered, replaced by the chilling realization that a monster had walked among them. Whisper Creek, once a haven of safety, was now a place where trust was broken and fear reigned. The investigation was massive, an unprecedented undertaking for a town the size of Whisper Creek. The local police force, unaccustomed to dealing with such heinous crimes, found themselves overwhelmed and in need of assistance. Over 100 officers from surrounding counties and state agencies descended upon the town, their presence a stark reminder of the horror that had visited their once peaceful community. The sheer number of law enforcement personnel was both reassuring and intimidating to the residents. Forensic teams meticulously combed the crime scene, their every move documented, every piece of evidence carefully collected and cataloged. The painstaking process was a testament to their dedication and the gravity of the situation. The normally quiet town was now abuzz with activity. Streets that were once empty after dusk were now filled with the hum of engines and the chatter of voices, as law enforcement and media personnel worked around the clock. Police cars and forensic vans lined the streets, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow over the once familiar surroundings. The night, usually a time of peace, was now a reminder of the darkness that had descended upon Whisper Creek. The media, drawn to the story like moths to a flame, set up camp on the outskirts of town, their satellite trucks and news vans a constant presence. The pressure was on. Reporters from across the country descended upon Whisper Creek, each vying for the latest scoop, the most heart-wrenching interview. The eyes of the nation were now fixed on Whisper Creek, and the residents, their lives turned upside down, were desperate for answers. The once tight-knit community found itself under a microscope, every action and reaction scrutinized by the public. They wanted justice for the 12 souls lost, for the families ripped apart by an unspeakable act of violence. The community, though broken, stood united in their grief and their demand for justice. They held vigils, marched in solidarity, and supported one another through the darkest of times, hoping that the long arm of the law would bring them the closure they so desperately needed. Days turned into weeks, each one an agonizing reminder of the tragedy that had befallen Whisper Creek. The investigation continued at a feverish pace, fueled by a combination of pressure, determination, and the sheer horror of the crime. Every lead was meticulously followed, every whisper of information thoroughly investigated. Then came the breakthrough. Deep within the bowels of the old Blackwood Manor, a sprawling Victorian mansion on the outskirts of town, a hidden cellar was discovered. Concealed behind a wall, its entrance cleverly disguised, the cellar was a chilling testament to the depravity of the human soul. The air inside was thick with the stench of decay and something else, something far more sinister. The walls were adorned with photographs, hundreds of them, their subjects bound, gagged, their eyes wide with terror. It was a gallery of horrors, a testament to the twisted mind that had orchestrated the nightmare that had descended upon Whisper Creek. Among the photographs, investigators found journals filled with rambling, incoherent writings that spoke of dark desires, of a hunger that could never be satiated. The words were chilling, revealing a mind consumed by darkness, a mind capable of unspeakable acts.